What's up everyone, Kari and Nicol here reporting to you live from my humble abode. Today we are talking presets. We are talking Lightroom presets. We're actually going to create one together because I think a lot of you guys don't understand how to use Lightroom properly and you're just adding in a preset, sliding back and forth and not knowing what to adjust to achieve the look that you want. So I'm going to create like a little moody, pretty natural preset and then I'm going to put it up on my website for free because I love free shit and you guys love free shit, so why not create a free preset just for you? So let's do it together. Let's head on into the computer and take it from there. Let's go. Guys, I just gotta say, I was just settling in to like get, oh look at my face, it's disgusting. I was just settling in to get you guys all warmed up on Lightroom and I thought I'm gonna grab myself one of those yogurts I just bought. I just gotta say, this is the most disgusting yogurt I've ever eaten in my life. Icelandic yogurt. Don't go there. Like, especially this brand. Oh, this is rotten. Anyway, let's get back to it. Okay guys, so you're going to want to open up your computer and head on into Adobe Lightroom CC. Once you've opened that up and you've imported what you want to work on, we're going to head into the photo and click over to the develop at the top of the page. And once we're in there, we're going to start sliding like no one else's business. Alright, so anyone who's familiar with Adobe Lightroom CC will know that down the right hand side you have a whole bunch of sliders. And you've got different things like split toning, adding in details, effects to your photos, the colors, tints, temps, exposure, contrast, all of your basics as well. So we're going to start out by working on our basics. And by basics, I mean your exposure, your contrast, your highlights, your shadows, all those sorts of things. In order to start making your own preset, you need to start by correcting the photo as is. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a little bit of exposure into this photo just because it's a little bit underexposed. Now just be careful with your exposure. If you add too much in, it's going to really whiten the photo and just pretty much overexpose it as if it was in camera. So just be careful with that. We're going to add a bit of contrast because I am a massive contrast fan and a lot of my photos are really contrasty. So we're going to add a bit of contrast in there. That's just going to make that portrait pop, bring out the bokeh a little bit more. The highlights. Generally don't need a huge amount of highlights yet, so we're just going to leave that one for now. We're going to bring down the shadows a little bit just in those trees from behind, so you'll see. That's just going to make Chase pop out a little bit more in the photo. It's going to just define those lines around him. Don't need to add any whites or blacks in at this stage. We'll go back and do that later. Then we're going to head down to your clarity. We're just going to bring up the clarity a little bit in this photo, not a huge amount because you can make them look a little plastic if you bring it up too much. Saturation, we just want to bring the saturation up. Now I'm not a huge fan of those greens, so we're going to dull down those greens in the photo, but we don't want to like down the saturation. So I think people get a little bit confused. By dropping the saturation in your photo, you obviously turn it into a black and white because you take all the color out. So some people I've noticed, especially on Instagram, trying to get less of the green in their photo, which is it is a big thing at the moment all over Instagram. Everyone's loving those muted tones. So people are downing the saturation on their photos, like so. By doing that, you're losing all the skin color, that autumn leaf isn't popping anymore, you're losing all of those colors that you really want in the photo, but you just don't want it to be as green as it is. So I'm going to show you how to do that, and that's going to be our main focus for today's preset. So we're just going to leave that where it is, so we can just double click on the saturation. That's just going to bring it back to 0. And we're going to head down to the tone curve. Now click on your tone curve, you're gonna see a line. Along that line, we're gonna create an S curve. This is sort of where I start with all of my photos. So you can see there's already 2 points at each end of the line. Tone curve is what you use to create those deep blacks and those deep shadows and those bright highlights. And it just allows you to have a little bit more control over what's going on in your photo. If you only have Lightroom for your mobile phone, then you're not gonna see the tone curve. It's not available via your mobile phone. This is only available for Lightroom CC Classic users. One end of the spectrum is really gonna bring down all of those shadows and those blacks, and then if you bring it up, it's obviously going to eliminate the blacks. So usually I bring down my blacks a little bit because I like more of a moody photo. If you're going for more of a white look photo, then you're obviously going to go the other way. But I like to embrace the blacks that are within the photo. And we're going to move this middle one just up a little bit. This is just going to balance it out a little bit between the highlights and the shadows. And then once again, just play around with what works for you. Obviously you can see the extremes here. So obviously the higher you take this end, the more contrasty it's going to be. And then the lower, obviously it drops the contrast out. So for me, I'm just going to drop a little bit. Then I've played around with the tone curve, which is, let me tell you, the #1 priority in editing photos. Then we're gonna head down to the color. So you'll see up here, you've got your hue, saturation, and luminance. All of these things come into play when editing a photo. So we're gonna start out with our hue because I always find it easier to start out with that. I like more of a toned down version of green. So I'm just gonna drop my greens to probably about here because I like that yellowiness coming through. My blues, I'm just gonna adjust a little bit. He's wearing a blue top, so I don't want to play with the blues too much. And you just gotta watch your skin tones. So for me, I always adjust my oranges, which are my skin tones. I just like to add a little bit more depth in the skin tone, so I just drop it a little bit. Like so, plus he's holding an autumn leaf, so it's really nice to make those oranges pop in there. Everything else seems pretty on point, so I'm going to move on to saturation. Click the saturation and then you can see along here all of the saturation points that you want to play with. So for me, once again, the greens have to go. So I drop the saturation on the green a lot. I'm not a green fan at all. So you can see the difference in this photo already, like it's completely changed. Now I'm just gonna bump up my aquas and my blues a little bit because I want to make his top pop, and it's also gonna come into the grass a little bit, adding a little bit more of a muted greeny color so we don't lose all the green color that we have. Everything else looks pretty good. Maybe bump up the orange a little bit, not too much, because boom, as soon as you go up too much, those skin tones just change completely. So we're just gonna up the oranges a little bit just because of that autumn leaf. We really want to make that pop as well. I'm going to change the green colors because for me, it's just still a little bit too green. I'm just going to up the greens a little bit. So this is just gonna adjust how much dark green and light green comes into play into your photos. And then I'm just gonna drop the aquas a bit. That's just gonna play with his shirt a little bit. It's just gonna give it a bit more depth, make those flowers pop on his shirt. And same with the blue. So that's just gonna adjust his shirt color and not much else. Gonna down the yellows a little bit because we really want to make those yellow trees in the back not so dominant. So I'm just gonna drop that a little bit. And the orange, well, we know that we want those skin tones to look beautiful, and he's looking so nice. Oh my gosh, I love this already. All right. Then we're gonna hit the split toning. So split toning is when you can play with the colors that come into balance in your shadows and in your highlights. So for me with the shadows, I generally leave them as is because I like a dark shadow. But if you wanted to play around with the hue in your shadow, you could change the hue in your shadow to pink if you wanted it to be pink. And then you could just up the saturation of that. And there you go. You've got all those pinks coming into play in your shadows. For me, not so much. I just like it the way it is. We're just gonna up the sharpening a little bit because we've dropped so much contrast out of the photo, and up the detail a little bit as well. He's looking gorgeous. This is gonna be a nice preset, guys. I can't wait for you guys to get it for free. So as you move on through these, guys, some of them you won't need to use, some you will. For today's purposes, we're not going to get too in-depth. We're just going to create a nice little preset for you guys to use. So with the grain, we're just going to up it a little bit. I do like a decent amount of grain in my photos, but be careful how much you add in. As you can see, the more I add in, the more underexposed it looks, like if you were to take a bad underexposed photo. But if you just play with it a little bit, it's going to add so much depth to the photo. We're going to head up to where we started, and the reason we're going to do that is because we're going to go back through the photo and adjust those things that we want to see pop a little bit more. Like I could see Chase's shirt popping a little bit more, his skin tone needs to be adjusted a little bit. We can drop down those blacks and up those whites now. To head into the exposure now, and we're just going to bump up the exposure a little bit more because we played with the blacks so much, he's just sort of disappearing a little bit in this photo, and we don't want that. So let's bump up the exposure and then drop down the highlights a bit, like so, and drop the blacks, up the whites. Oh, gorgeous. A little bit of clarity in the photo. Nice. And then we're just gonna up the saturation a little bit so that those leaves and stuff pop. That's a nice moody photo, guys. I'm loving it. I'm just gonna head back down to my tone curve, and I'm just gonna adjust that a little bit more for more of a moody style of photo, which is what we're after. So we're just gonna drop that down a little bit more, like so. And same as the top, like that. Just we don't want it to look too sort of adjusted. That's a nice photo. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Now we're just gonna head back down, play with the saturation on the colors a little bit more. So obviously I want to drop the greens a bit more because green is not my thing. Down a bit. That looks much nicer. Look much nicer. Bump up your aquas a little bit. That's just gonna bring some sort of aqua colors into the photo. A little bit more blue in the shirt, like so. It's looking nice. Looking real nice. It's good. Okay, so now we're just going to drop the tint. Like I said, we're not going to play with it too much. We want it to still look like a nice natural photo, like so. That's a nice preset. Look at us go. We've nailed it. We're done. So we're going to head on out of Lightroom, head back to the library part and export your photo. I'm just going to export it straight to the desktop today. So guys, you've completed your preset. This is awesome news for you. This guy will be available for free on my website tonight, but if you have developed this yourself and you want to then save your preset, all you have to do is head up to the plus button here, like so, and create preset. Create your preset, name it whatever you want to name it, and then create. I've already saved this preset and put it up on my website, but that's how you save your own preset. One beautiful preset, if I do say so myself. You can just click the slash button to be able to see before and afters, like so. Before, after. Look at the difference in that photo. And we really didn't adjust too much. We haven't added an overlay. There's no colors coming through on this photo that aren't genuinely there. So you should be really proud of yourself if you've gone and created your preset just like so. So guys, in order to grab your free preset, just follow the link down below. You'll find all the links needed for anything from throughout this tutorial. Head down, download the preset. While you're down there, click subscribe, because if you don't subscribe already, you really should. And click the like button, because every little like helps me to provide content for you. Also, click the bell, ding ding ding, so that you can be notified every time that I upload content. And sometimes I sing, and sometimes I don't. Thank you so much for your views, guys. Remember, I'll be back next week. Love you all. Thank you. But today we have created a preset together because we are awesome, and that is the only reason. I don't know what I'm talking about now, but thank you for joining me. Click the subscribe button down below if you've liked this video. Click the subscribe button down below if you have... click the subscribe button down below to be kept updated. Click the subscribe button down below to be kept up to date with content. Also click the bell, ding ding ding, to be notified every time I upload. Click the like button, because every like counts, and with this crappy YouTube algorithm, we could all use an extra like. Thank you so much for your views, guys. Remember, I'll be back next week. Also download your free preset down below. Love you all. Thank you.